It's the morning drive.
Good morning, and welcome to the Morning Drive. I'm your host, Brooks Fiesinger of BrooksFiesinger.com and MillionaireWho.com, where we help you stabilize your wallet, secure your future, and succeed in entrepreneurship and finance. I'm here with my co-host again today, Hyundai Sonata. All right, let's get on the road. Got 3 topics to talk about today. One of them is family. The other one is going to be holidays and the effect on habits. And the last is going to be risk. All right. So, why am I talking about family? And one of the reasons I'm talking about family today and starting out talking about family is because to me, family is incredibly important. I know to a lot of people, family is important. Family is also used as an excuse. It's the reason why a lot of people claim they're not successful. They're not successful because they have to prioritize their family. And I agree completely with prioritizing family. Just yesterday was a holiday, and yesterday's holiday meant that, time that I would normally spend working on things in the evening, I instead wanted to make sure I spent that evening with my family, spending quality time with my daughter, and therefore, I had to put off some other things that I'd normally be doing, and that's okay in that situation, because once again, everybody has priorities, and I believe that your family needs to be a priority. They should be an asset to everything you do, and they should be a major reason why you're successful. And that's pretty important to me. Your family is not a hindrance. It's not a hurdle. It doesn't make things more difficult. Instead, it gives you motivation. It's a reason why you have to be successful. If you're not successful, how are your kids going to be successful? If you're not successful, how are you going to provide for your family? How are you going to make sure they have a good house and a good food and good education and whatever they need? How can you assure that if you don't have some level of success? And maybe you sit there and say, okay, well, I'll borrow it all. I'll borrow it to make sure they have all the food. And then what's going to happen? You're going to end up being, 70 years old, and you're going to be broke. And do you know what a 70-year-old broke person does? 70-year-old broke person relies on their parents or their kids, okay? If you're a parent relying on your kid, that is sad. You are putting a massive burden on your kids because you're too lazy and too incompetent to be successful. Are you kidding me? Right? Now, there's exceptions. There's always exceptions to every rule. And so, if somebody goes through something like a disability or whatnot, or just something awful happens to them, yes, I will gladly help take care of my parents. You should help take care of your parents. Your family is important. You should take care of them, both your kids and your parents. But if you're a parent, your number one goal should be to make sure your kids aren't burdened by you, right? You're supposed to make your kids' lives better. You're not supposed to make them create a burden. You're not supposed to make your kids' lives worse just because you can't get off your rear end and do what you need to do, right? So, keep that in mind, because you have a family, you have this obligation to succeed. And just because you're going to succeed, that does not mean your family has to take a sacrifice. In fact, many of the most successful people I know have the happiest family lives. And some people talk about this idea of work-life balance. And I used to strive for work-life balance. And the problem is, it's impossible. You can't get work-life balance. And the reason why I say it's impossible is because then you're always struggling. It's always every time you're at work, you're feeling like, hey, why am I at work? Shouldn't I instead be with my family? And anytime you're with your family, you think, oh my gosh, am I spending too much time with my family? Should I spend more time at work? We need to cut out the work or family and say and, right? You need work and family. And your family needs work, and your work can benefit from your family. And so once again, prioritize your family. Your family is incredibly important. To me, my family is of essence. That's what I do, live for every day is my family and God. And so go ahead, live for your family, put them first. But that does not mean you have an excuse not to succeed. In fact, that creates a larger obligation to succeed. So if family is important to you, you need to go out there and make success happen. You can't use your family as an excuse for you to be lazy and sit on your bottom and do nothing. That's not acceptable, right? That's just being irresponsible So don't be irresponsible and go be successful. Now, okay, how can you say family is both, is important? How do you say that it doesn't conflict with work? If you're at work, doesn't that mean you're not spending time with family? And I would say, yes, it does. I spend a lot of time away from family, but that just means that when I'm with my family, I need to spend very high quality time with them and make it important and make it time that they remember and time that we can value together. And it's easier to do that when you have some level of success. The other secret part of this is as you become more successful, you often gain more flexibility, and this is where things get exciting. So, even though I have a fairly traditional quote unquote 9 to 5, and I often go spend evenings traveling or whatnot, that certainly is a play of my main primary job. But when I'm working on the other projects, when I'm working the evenings and the weekends and whatnot, there's a whole lot of flexibility there. I can go spend time with my daughter or spend time with my wife, and I can, go do something with them. We can go on a hike, we can go on a walk, and then I can do some work or some projects I need to do on the side. I used to think it was a negative to carry your cell phone with you. And you know what? Carrying your cell phone around and checking silly emails and getting on playing video games and stuff like that, text messaging random people, that's not a great thing to do when you're spending quality time with the family. It destroys your family time, in my opinion. I don't know how you can have great quality time if you keep checking your cell phone. But just because you're not checking your cell phone 24/7, it doesn't mean you can't be available. And so, say I'm working a real estate deal, and real estate deals don't take the weekends off. So I get a phone call from my real estate agent trying to get something taken care of. I take that call, right? And are there times that are truly off limits? Yes. I'm not going to take that phone call while I'm sitting down at Thanksgiving dinner. But when we're watching the football game with a family and talking after Thanksgiving dinner, I don't think it's a big burden on my family to take a quick phone call. So you can still be working and still be available and still have things going on behind the scenes while you're spending time with your family. In addition, we were just talking about, taking those phone calls. When you become more successful, then your focus ends up being on how do you create wealth when you're not doing anything, right? My stock is working for me right now. I can be podcasting with you, and my stock is working for me. My interest-bearing accounts are working for me. A rental property is working for me. A business that I founded is working for me, right? I've got people right now at a location working hard. They're earning their paychecks, so it's good for them. And guess what? It's earning money for me as well. I'm not actually there doing the work. So the biggest challenge to get to that point where you can start earning a bunch of money without you actively working 24/7 is to work 24/7 until you get to the point where you don't have to. And that's kind of one of those hurdles that a lot of people don't want to do. They sit there and say, I don't want to make that sacrifice. But the kicker is, isn't it worth making a sacrifice for a short period of time in order to get a huge reward down the road? And it's huge, tremendously huge, right? So if I have to work double time, triple time for a couple of months or even a couple of years to therefore guarantee a long time future where I don't have to, and where I have flexibility, and where I have much larger incomes coming in, and where I can take care of my family, and where I can be confident that my kids aren't going to have to care for me when retirement. To me, I don't know how somebody would turn that down. I'll tell you right now, if you tell me I can work 1 hour for no pay and you'll give me $50,000 in a year, I will take that any day, right? Why would I rather work for $5 an hour if I can work for 1 hour free and get $50,000 next year? And that's really what it ends up being all about. When you talk about this idea of putting in that extra effort up front, is that extra effort up front pays dividends over time. And so therefore, when you get that extra, $5,000 next year that you didn't have to do day-to-day activity for, that's money in your pocket. It's helping everything you want to be doing, and yet you didn't have to make those short-term sacrifices at that point. So you're going to have to make sacrifices up front. Once you make those sacrifices up front, then you'll be amazed at how much more flexibility you have moving forward, therefore freeing you up for your family way more than even a typical person would permit. And once again, I'm still not at a point in my life where I have as much flexibility as people who are much more successful than I. If I just think about the owner of our company, he can without a question, if he's going somewhere, he can bring his wife with him. If he needs to take a break for an hour to do something, he will be able to do that at any point. But the kicker is he also puts in massive amounts of work every other day of the week, including weekends, right? I've had meetings with him on Saturdays and weekends. And people like that are working hard all the time. But when you're working hard all the time and being uber successful, then you've got the tremendous benefit of having some level of flexibility, so your family doesn't have to take those sacrifices. But even in the short term, right? Even in the short term when you're taking those sacrifices, they're not mutually exclusive, right? There's no reason why my wife can't help me with something that I'm working on and be a part of it. There's no reason my kids can't help me and be part of it. And I even used this story the other day. But I got new furniture in the office. My daughter helped me put it together and was having fun. We were having fun. We put furniture together. She was helpful, made things go faster, and it was actually quality time together. And after we were done building this furniture, what did we get to do? We got some ice cream, and it was a fun evening. And so many people think you have to go spend money and go do something external for a fun evening. I was working with somebody who talked about how he felt the obligation to go buy football tickets to take his kids to a football game, and how it costs like $500 or $600. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, how did you afford, in their situation, how did you afford $500 or $600 to go to a football game, right? And I'm not opposed to going to football games. I've had season tickets to Cincinnati Bengals for a number of years. I love going to football games, but that's a luxury, right? You can spend quality time with your family without spending $600 on football tickets. At a minimum, you can go spend $10 and go to look at the semi-pro game. I know we've got a team called FC Cincinnati, which is a soccer team here, and the games are supposed to be a blast, and they're relatively cheap. They cost like $12 or $10 or something. So go to a $10 soccer game instead of a $600 football game, and I bet your kids will have as much fun. And so it can be great quality time cheaper. But then you can even take that further and say, how can your family help you succeed in your obligations? And one of the things that I did recently was look for side projects I could do that resonated well with my wife. So, once again, I could do a side project that had something to do with computer programming, which, I've self-taught myself a little bit of computer programming back in the day. I would never call myself an expert. But I can do some basic computer programming. But my wife has no interest in computer programming. So if I do computer programming, I'm totally on my own. But you know what? My wife is used to be a teacher. And so therefore, what does resonate with her are things like special needs and books and reading and whatnot. So when I was working on a project called Active Word Fonts, which was a system I'll talk to you about another time, but that helps dyslexics read better, faster, and I had that patented, was that up her alley? Oh yes. That was something that she could be excited about, and she could talk about, and she could work with, and she was able to work with students on, because it was up her alley. It was something we could do mutually. It wasn't something that I was doing and I had the skill set for. It was something we both were doing and both had the skill set for. And so it turned into a fun project that both of us could do together, which meant quality husband-wife time and business success, right? And one of the biggest hurdles to get over to get to that point is talking openly about money, finance, and success. Now, I'm not going to get into exactly what you should do between husband and wife, but most people I know that aren't successful are afraid to talk about money. They say, talking about money is rude. And yet, conveniently, all the successful people that I know talk freely about money, right? They sit there with each other and they talk about, here's what I'm doing to make money, here's what I'm doing with my money. And it doesn't mean you necessarily tell everybody what your paycheck is. But the idea is you can have conversations about finance and strategy and whatnot to make yourself more intelligent, more educated about what others are doing, and therefore you do better. There's nothing wrong with that. And when you have those kind of conversations openly with your spouse, then you find these commonalities of places where both of you can work together and be excited together and generate these projects together. So that all starts with just being more open about this whole concept. It's kind of funny. I mean, people are more open about their health, which is to me very personal, than they are open about their financial stuff. I mean, how do you become smarter? You're not taking classes on finance. Few of you are, but even if you take class in finance, you're taking like 40 hours of classes and you get a degree in finance. If you're not talking to people about it and you're not reading about it, you're not how are you learning about it? And how are other people learning from you? One of the reasons I started talking so much about finance and money is because if other people are failing because they don't understand what I understand, isn't that slightly my problem that I didn't talk to them about it? Like, I feel like I need to talk to you because if I can help you be more successful, that's one of my duties as a human being. As a human being, I should be trying to help other people succeed and be good in their lives and be taken care of and have what they need. That's something that I should be doing as a human being. So when somebody says, "Oh, isn't it rude to talk about finance?" I look at them with a blank stare and say, why? How is it rude to talk about what's going to be mutually beneficial for both of us? I don't get that, and I'm not going to get that, especially when in practice, when I go to a meetup with a bunch of guys that have the Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and conveniently, I know there's different people who have Ferraris and Lamborghinis, but the group of people that I hang out with, they, none of them are the 18-year-old whose daddy bought him a Lamborghini type, right? They're all people who bought them themselves. And talking about success in business and whatnot is 100% fair game and commonality with that group, right? It's like, hey, we could talk about car exhaust parts and then a minute later start talking about financial strategies and whatnot. And when I talk to other people in different places who are successful, talking about finance comes up like that, right? Talking about money and stuff like that comes up like that. And so if you feel like it's rude, then I would jump to the assumption that you're not very successful yet. So break over that hurdle, talk about it. And when you talk about that with your spouse, when you have that conversation with your husband or wife, that's going to open up the conversation of, okay, so how are we generating additional wealth, and where are there places that we can generate additional wealth that the two of us, or maybe even with your kids, the 3, 4, 5 of us, are excited to do it together? Where's a place that we all bring skills to the table and can all do cool stuff? And when you find those kind of opportunities, then you're going to find that level of success that you're looking for in cooperation with your spouse and your family, and therefore it is both prime family time and prime financial success time, right? It's a win-win in both avenues. And those are the kind of things I urge you to look for, because family's important, but because of your family, you must be successful, right? Do not tell me you're a failure in life because your kids are too important for you, right? Your kids are so important, you better not be a failure, because when you're crying to them because you can't afford your insulin shots when you're 70, okay, and you're begging them to take their hard-earned money and go borrow money in their name to help you out, you're being a burden on them. That is not helping them. You are their problem, right? So once again, don't be a problem for your family, be a solution for your family. And if you're going to be a solution for your family, you better start right now in being successful. Just drove by a skunk. Seriously, drove by a skunk and it stinks. You can't smell anything, but how can you not get distracted by driving by a skunk? Anyway, so we're talking about family, and one of the things that came up with family is this idea of holidays. And so yesterday was a holiday, and because it was a holiday, I wanted to spend time with my family. The problem with holidays is, what does it do to your schedule, your plan, your activities? Now, when you're working very hard and you're spending, all your efforts making things happen, then you're going to find that you run a very tight ship. You have no option but to run a tight ship. That means you're running a tight schedule. You've got very specific times that you're doing specific things. You've got to make sure certain things are getting accomplished in certain days. And when you're doing that, then a holiday or something like that really throws a wrench into your habits. And holidays, snow days, days off school, anything that throws a big wrench in your routine can have catastrophic issues. And the biggest issue that tends to happen isn't that you have to work a little harder and move some things around. The biggest issue is that once you kind of snap the triggers that cause the habit, then you're going to find yourself not following through the rest of the habit, and then you can sometimes kind of break your habit. And so what will end up happening is you have something like a holiday, and then all of a sudden after your holiday, you stop working out, you stop working on your project, you stop getting things done, and then all of a sudden you revert back to a stage where you weren't seeing high level success, and that's a problem. So how do you handle these holidays? Now this has always been a challenge for me. It's always been a hurdle because there's no easy answer. And the reason why there's no easy answer is because it all comes down to how you prioritize things. And my approach on prioritization is that I don't necessarily believe you should schedule every little detail. The approach that I use is a priority model where I always know and list what my top priorities are and focus on those, and then I have lower level priorities at all times. And so once I get those high level priorities done, then I can move into the low level priorities. So when I have a holiday and it shifts things around a little bit at time, all it really does is kind of shifts my priorities a little bit. And that does mean a lower level priority is going to potentially fall on the wayside for a day or two. However, if every day you're taking that approach of making sure you're addressing the proper priorities, then just because priorities get rearranged doesn't mean your habits and your processes change, right? So even though you have a holiday and a new priority emerges, which is, for example, spending time with your family or visiting family or whatnot, just because that priority changes doesn't change the approach you have to that day. And that's why I've always gone for a process-minded approach in almost anything I do. It is making sure your process is bulletproof, and when the process is bulletproof, what you actually do every day will be bulletproof. So once again, I don't care that your schedule's messed up, because if your priorities, your whole priority process is solid, then your priorities readjusted and you just go with your new priorities. And then the next day, your priorities readjust and you keep working on those priorities as stated. Now, frequently, you do have to put in a little extra effort, and you have to put in a little extra effort the days before and the days after. And the days before is something that I learned a long time ago. So when I used to work and I have to go in the office, and say, for example, we're off on Monday, then that would mean on Friday, when I went into the office, I would stay until 8, 9 o'clock at night, making sure I was more than caught up and way ahead since I was missing Monday. Then, when Monday was taken care of, because it's holiday, so I'm not going to the office. I might be working on some side projects, but I'm not going to the office. Then I get there on Tuesday, and I've got a little bit of catching up to do to make up for Monday, but I had gotten so far ahead on Friday that I don't have a lot of catch up necessary. And so that's been a little tool that I've used. But yeah, you're going to kind of have to find places that you can compress your time. In project management, they call that crashing a project, right? Maybe instead of making dinner, the holiday is a great excuse to go out and pick up food on your way home. So instead of that 30-minute dinner making project, you now created a 10-minute pick up food project. Maybe instead of sitting down with your family the next day, you instead have to, eat in your office while you're working on other things. And while you might say, wait, isn't that taking away from family? You were just talking about family a minute ago. It's not taken away from family, because you spend an entire day with the family the day before. You spent this real high quality time. And in order to get that quality time, is it that big of a deal that the next day you skip out on 15 minutes of sitting down time? And if it is, maybe it is. If it's that important to you, then crash something else, right? Brush your teeth in the car. I don't know. But find another place to crash it, even if it costs a few bucks, right? And if you're seeing a good level of success, then you can afford to spend a few bucks when you need to create these crashes in your life, when you need to compress the time to get things done. Another thing you can do is, once again, can your family help? Can you get your daughter or your wife or your husband to help with something to help, once again, compress that time? And most people I know that are successful, they watch every dollar, but you can bet that there are times that you have to create investments where you have to spend money to get a bigger return, even if that return isn't financial. Sometimes that return is quality family time, and you can make those investments in your life, and sometimes you do that in order to crash this project. So once again, that happens when there's holidays, when there's vacation days, anything like that. You want to make sure that doesn't become an excuse and a reason why you let yourself start to fail and stop seeing success. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is this concept of risk. And this is going to be a much bigger topic in the future, but I felt like, since I was talking about family and we were talking about holidays, that I wanted to get something that was a little more high level or more advanced kind of conversation stuff. And so I just want to talk about risk. And one of the most interesting things about risk is this notion that entrepreneurs take risk. So even if you work for a company and you consider yourself more of an entrepreneur, which is an entrepreneur that works inside an existing company, I believe most people need to exercise their entrepreneurial efforts. And many people equate entrepreneurship with this concept of taking risks. And I laugh about that, because most entrepreneurs that I know are incredibly risk adverse, which means they are against risk. They won't take risks. And do you know what's incredibly risky to me? One of the riskiest things in the world, having a single job. Right? My boss could let me go tomorrow and then I lose my primary job. If I don't have other projects going on, then I'm going to, cry in the streets about how I don't have any money? I mean, seriously. I mean, that's pretty risky. So my backup plan, if you only have one single job, your backup plan is, I'm going to go cry in the streets and hope the government gives me unemployment. Like, that's a crock. That's pretty sad that that's your backup plan. To me, that sounds like ultra high risk, right? I have no other alternatives, therefore my life is ruined if I lose my job. So I've always said you need at least 3 jobs, right? And I've always held that myself, always making sure I have at least 3 jobs. And, right now I've got about 5, but, I always think you need at least 3. And so if my primary employer were to let me go tomorrow, I wouldn't be happy, but it wouldn't have any huge ramifications in my life. I can still cover all my bills. I can still keep, moving in the right direction. So a lot of entrepreneurs are going to start their own companies or run their own projects, not because they're excited to take on this risk, like some people think, but because they're so scared of risk or so risk adverse that they know having 1,000 customers is less risky than having 1 customer, which is an employer. And so, once again, if you have 1,000 customers selling shoes, or you work at a shoe company, if you lose 5 customers, and your shoe company is selling 1,000 pairs of shoes to 1,000 customers, that's going to make a minor dent. Probably you won't even notice too much. But if you work one job for one customer, which is your boss or the company, and you lose that one customer, you're done. You're literally done. So when we talk about entrepreneurs, it's not about risk. And if you feel like what you're doing is risky, then it's probably not the right thing to do, because every entrepreneur I know that started a company didn't view it as risk at all. And there are some exceptions. There's always exceptions. But, the vast majority of successful entrepreneurs don't take risks. And if you're not 100% convinced that the project you're working on is going to be successful, then you need to do more research, right? Become 100% convinced. And that's the thing that I find kind of funny. If I'm starting a project, I don't say, hey, I'm going to go put $10,000 on the line and quote, see what happens. No, I go do the research and say, hey, why wouldn't somebody put $1,000 here? Because you're guaranteed to get $10,000 back, right? If I'm guaranteed to get $10,000 back, why wouldn't you do it? And for a lot of projects I've done in my life, that's exactly what happened. Is I sat there and I looked around and I said, am I missing something? Why this is so clear to me? It's so clear to me that this is an easy opportunity that's going to work. Why is nobody else taking advantage of it? Why is nobody else doing it? And those are the kind of opportunities that you should jump on, because you are seeing something that you can take advantage of. And when you have so much confidence that you're actually confused why nobody else is doing it, then you have the confidence to know that that isn't a high risk venture. And so when you talk to some people, even somebody say mining the moon or something like that, they look at it saying, I'm pretty darn confident that I'm going to get $500 million just from signing an expedition. And I'm pretty confident I can do it for $50 million. Why wouldn't I trade $50 million for $500 million? It seems like a pretty obvious no-brainer, right? So, in those situations, they're not taking risk. And entrepreneurs aren't taking risk. Most of the time when they're taking advantage of an opportunity, they are looking carefully at where there is something very clear to them, where they're confident that something's going to happen, and others just don't see it. And they do the research, they put the time in, they put the legwork in to have that complete confidence that they're doing something that isn't high risk. So once again, entrepreneurs are not risk takers, they're risk adverse. They're taking opportunities that are low risk. They're mitigating their risk by having many customers instead of a few. And I always find that interesting, because people say, how can they be that risky? They're not risky. They're less risky than you probably are, right? If you're sitting there with just one job and one point of employment, you are the highest risk type of person I've ever heard of. And I don't know how you do it, because I personally could never do that. All right, well, that's it for today. I appreciate you joining me today on this drive. Hopefully you learned a little something today. And now go out there and make the impossible happen.
It's the morning drive.